Have you ever noticed how every Pacific Coast video shows the same crowded beaches, the same famous stops, and somehow leaves you feeling like the real beauty is missing? Based on publicly available tourism patterns and regional travel behavior, most people experience only a narrow slice of what this coastline actually offers. Honestly, here's what surprised me when digging deeper. Some of the most beautiful coastal towns aren't hidden because they lack charm, but because they've quietly avoided attention. Locals say the ocean still sets the rhythm of daily life here, shaping culture, pace, and identity in ways visitors rarely notice. If you think you already know the Pacific Coast, that assumption is about to be challenged, because the real question isn't where these towns are, but why they stay invisible. Why these towns stay invisible. These Pacific Coast towns don't stay overlooked by accident. Their invisibility is built into the landscape and the choices made around it. Many sit behind cliffs, narrow highways, or protected shorelines that naturally limit traffic. Large resorts and aggressive tourism never arrive, not because they can't, but because they aren't welcomed. Locals say staying quiet protects daily life, ecosystems, and identity. The surprising truth is that avoiding attention helps these towns survive, keeping beauty intact instead of consumed. That balance defines the first place on this list. Number 8. Carmel by the Sea, California. Number 8 feels familiar to many people, yet strangely unexplored, because Carmel by the Sea reveals itself only when you slow down enough to notice it. This coastal village on the Monterey Peninsula grew into an artist's refuge after creative communities drifted south along the coast, shaping a town where storybook cottages, narrow lanes, and gallery-lined streets still define daily life. You'll notice there are no chain stores, no streetlights, and no numbered addresses. Details that quietly preserve a sense of intimacy and old-world charm. Locals often say the town was built for walking, not rushing, with white sand beaches unfolding just beyond the village and wind-shaped cypress trees framing the Pacific like living sculptures. Nearby coastal headlands protect rich marine habitats where seals rest offshore and seabirds circle above turquoise coves, reminding visitors that nature remains in control here. Honestly, what surprises most people is that Carmel's beauty isn't loud or dramatic at first glance. It's layered, unfolding through texture, light, and atmosphere rather than spectacle. This deliberate restraint is exactly why the town avoids constant attention. And that same quiet philosophy appears again in a very different coastal setting. Number 7. Capitola, California. Number 7 stands out because Capitola feels effortlessly joyful, almost as if it was designed to lower your pulse the moment you arrive. Nestled along the curve of Monterey Bay, this small seaside village is known as one of California's oldest coastal resort towns, and its layout reflects a time when beaches were built around people, not traffic. The shoreline bends inward here, creating calmer waters and softer sand, which gives the village beach a sheltered, almost Mediterranean feel. You'll notice the pastel-colored waterfront homes rising just above the sand, a visual signature that locals have protected for generations to keep the town human in scale rather than glossy or overbuilt. Honestly, what surprises most visitors is how Capitola feels lively without being loud, colorful without feeling artificial, and relaxed without losing its identity. That same sense of unpolished coastal authenticity becomes even more pronounced in the next town. Number 6. Cayucos, California. Number 6 feels like a pause button along the Pacific, because Cayucos preserves a version of coastal California that quietly faded elsewhere. Positioned between grassy bluffs and the open ocean, this small town grew around its wooden pier, which still functions as the social center rather than a staged attraction. Cayucos has remained intentionally small, with a tight-knit community, low-rise buildings, and a shoreline untouched by large resorts or high-density development. You'll notice classic beach cottages, locally owned shops, and streets meant for evening walks instead of traffic shortcuts. The ocean here stays cool and powerful, shaping a surf culture rooted in patience and rhythm, while nearby, coastal parks protect windswept headlands where erosion, fog, and light continuously reshape the view. What surprises many people is how Cayucos reveals its beauty slowly, through quiet sunsets and unplanned conversations near the pier. That understated authenticity leads directly into a place defined by heritage and cultural preservation. Number 5. Solvang, California. Number 5 feels almost out of place at first glance, because Solvang doesn't resemble the California coast people expect. Yet its story explains everything. Located in the Santa Ynez Valley not far from the Pacific, this town was founded by Danish immigrants who intentionally preserved their language, architecture, and traditions instead of blending into surrounding communities. You'll notice half-timbered buildings, windmills, and cobblestone-style streets that turn the town itself into a living cultural archive rather than a themed attraction. Based on publicly available data, Solvang's setting between coastal influence and inland valleys creates a mild climate that also supports one of California's most established wine regions, allowing vineyards to thrive alongside bakeries, museums, and family-run shops. Locals often say the town works because identity here is protected, not performed, passed down through food, festivals, and daily routines rather than marketing. What surprises many visitors is how grounded Solvang feels once the novelty fades, revealing a community built on continuity instead of trends. That deliberate preservation mirrors another place where geography limits change even more dramatically. Number 4. Avalon, California. Number 4 feels different the moment you arrive, because Avalon exists inside natural limits that most coastal towns never had. Set within a protected harbor on Santa Catalina Island, this is the island's only incorporated town, and geography alone dictates how life works here. Based on publicly available transportation and land use records, most of the island is preserved open space. Development is tightly controlled, and vehicle access is restricted, which is why streets are quiet and movement happens at walking pace or by small electric carts. You'll notice how the harbor curves inward, calming the water and creating a natural gathering place where boats, hillsides, and pastel buildings stack upward instead of spreading out. Locals often say the town stays balanced because expansion simply isn't possible, forcing growth to happen inward through culture rather than outward through construction. The iconic casino building dominates the skyline, not as a gambling hall, but as a cultural anchor that hosts performances, gatherings, and island traditions. What surprises many people is how quickly Avalon resets your sense of time, replacing urgency with rhythm shaped by ferries, tides, and light. That same relationship between land and restraint takes a completely different form along the mainland coast, where nature feels wilder and less contained. Number 3. Bandon, Oregon. Number 3 feels untamed in a way most Pacific Coast towns no longer allow, because Bandon never tried to soften its edges. Located on Oregon's southern shoreline near the mouth of a river, this town exists where powerful waves, shifting sand, and towering sea stacks dominate the horizon. The beaches here are shaped by constant motion, with massive rock formations rising straight from the surf, carved over time by wind and tide rather than design. You'll notice how development stays set back from the shoreline, allowing nature to remain the main character instead of a backdrop. Local stories stretch far beyond modern settlement, rooted in indigenous legends that still surround landmarks like Face Rock, where geology and storytelling merge into a single identity. What often surprises people is how creativity grows from this rugged environment, with materials carried in by the ocean turned into public art instead of discarded, reflecting a community shaped by endurance rather than polish. That same balance between nature and access reaches its most iconic form in a town defined by one unmistakable landmark. Number 2. Cannon Beach, Oregon. Number 2 feels familiar at first, yet the more time you spend here, the more you realize Cannon Beach operates on rules entirely its own. Set along Oregon's northern coast, this town is shaped by one towering presence rising from the shoreline, a massive sea stack formed by ancient lava flows that now anchors the rhythm of tides, wildlife, and daily life. The surrounding beach stretches wide and open, protected by coastal laws that keep the shoreline publicly accessible and largely free from private development, allowing nature to remain uninterrupted. You'll notice tide pools that transform into living classrooms as the ocean retreats, revealing starfish, anemones, and crabs thriving in plain sight, while seabirds circle overhead following seasonal patterns older than the town itself. Locals often say this place isn't about spectacle, but awareness, where fog, wind, and shifting light demand attention rather than distraction. What surprises many people is how the town stays calm despite its beauty, because the focus remains on coexistence with the landscape rather than conquering it. That same respect for nature continues farther down the coast, where movement and change define everything. Number 1. Florence, Oregon. Number 1 earns its place because Florence feels like a coastline that never stands still, a town shaped by motion rather than monuments. Set where a river meets the Pacific, Florence lives between water, wind, and sand, creating a landscape that constantly rewrites itself. The shoreline nearby is defined by vast dunes that rise and shift like waves, forming one of the largest coastal sand systems in the country, while cliffs and caves along the headlands shelter thriving marine life just offshore. You'll notice how the ocean dominates everything here, from weather patterns to daily routines, with sea lions gathering in echoing caverns and seabirds tracing invisible highways above the surf. The historic waterfront reflects a working past tied to fishing, timber, and maritime trade, yet it remains human in scale, lined with small shops and weathered buildings rather than large developments. What surprises many people is how Florence balances wildness and warmth, where dramatic scenery exists alongside a grounded community that adapts instead of resists. That constant movement explains why this place stays unforgettable, and it leads directly into a deeper question about why the Pacific Coast still hides beauty like this at all. The truth about hidden beauty. The reality of the Pacific Coast is that beauty lasts only where attention stays limited. Places that resist exposure tend to preserve identity, landscape, and rhythm longer than destinations built for scale. Locals often say, once a place becomes a headline, costs rise and character thins out. The coast keeps changing, but the towns that endure are the ones that stay just out of reach and disappear the moment too many people notice.